Hello and welcome to Celebrating Cinema, a podcast for the love of cinema. I'm your host, Laura Gommans, and I'm here with Elliot Bloom.
Hello, nice to be in the driver's seat today.
Oh yeah. Today we're doing a review roundup where we discuss things coming to cinemas, which in this case is going to be Steven Soderbergh's Black Bag and two re-releases, Persepolis and Showgirls. We have a couple of really cool things happening at Lab 111 in Amsterdam in the coming weeks. There's a ton of classics on our screen like Babe, Pride and Prejudice, The Handmaiden, and Night of the Hunter. And we have two big programs running at the moment, one on Wes Anderson, which we also have a big episode coming up about, and one about Iranian cinema to coincide with our re-release of Persepolis. So find your tickets for all of those at lab111.nl. First of all, Elliot, what have you been watching recently?
I watched Boy by Taika Waititi. Do you know this film?
Is it an old one?
Yeah, it's one of his first films that he made, and I have so much time for Taika Waititi when he's making films in New Zealand because this is him at his best. It's goofy as hell. He makes films based through the eyes of children, and I think it's something so sweet about it, even though there's also a real sadness to this film. This film is about a son who has to look after his family or his brothers and sisters because his grandmother's gone his way, his mother has died, and his father has been absent. His father comes back, and it's all about him trying to find this treasure or money for his sleazy father, and he sort of realizes who he is or how he doesn't need his father in the end. But it's brilliant, and I wish Taika Waititi would go back to making films.
Me too.
In New
Get
Zealand.
him out of that Marvel contract, please. I beg you.
Yeah, please. What about you? What have you watched recently?
Oh man, I watched Pink Floyd's Echoes live at Pompeii in the cinema.
How was that?
And I cried the whole way through.
Is it like a live concert?
So it basically is a concert that they recorded in the early 70s at Pompeii. So in the kind of like Coliseum-y bit that they have there. And they just put some amps down. These boys took their shirts off. That's not why I love it. These boys took their shirts off and they just stood there and made the most amazing psychedelic ass music. The original release was only that concert, which is like under an hour. But they re-released it sometime in the like late 70s, early 80s with clips from them recording Dark Side of the Moon in the studio. I wish it had a little bit more of the music from those recordings because it's just them. It is insane to watch them lay down a guitar solo for Brain Damage or something. That's fucking insane. But every time it's like, oh, this is my jam. And then it fades out to have them talk about how Nick Mason wants the crust cut off of his apple pie, which is insane, but also like good to know that he doesn't want crust on his apple pie. Give that boy his pie. No, I thought it was beautiful. I love a concert movie. As someone who gets like very easily overstimulated when I go to actual concerts, I just get annoyed with like someone standing too close to me. I have to pee. There's a crowd. This is just like you sit your ass down in the theater and you just have front row seats.
Yeah. I'm all for that. I could watch a concert movie.
Yeah, I love it. We should do more of that. But we're not here to talk about Pink Floyd. We're here to talk about movies. So first off, Persepolis. Persepolis is getting a re-release through Lab 111's very own distribution agency, Odyssey Films, which we're very proud of. It's Marjane Satrapi's powerful animated film based on her graphic novel of the same name. It's an autobiographical story of her childhood and early adulthood during and after the Islamic Revolution in Iran. We follow Marjane, or Marji, as she grows up in a progressive family in Tehran. It shows how her world changes drastically when the Shah is overthrown and the new regime brings severe restrictions, particularly for women. As things get more dangerous, her parents send her to Europe for safety, but being an Iranian abroad comes with its own struggles of identity, alienation, and loss. Here's a clip.
Woman with the shoulder bag, please stop running. I repeat, the woman with the shoulder bag, stop running. Hey, you, stop where you are.
Mind telling us why you're running, sister?
Because I'm late. I have class in 5 minutes.
But you can't run like that, miss. When you run, your rear end jiggles. It's what you call immodest.
Well, then stop staring at my butt!
I really love this movie. Elliot, what do you think?
I also love it.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of a cheat code when you tell a story through a child's eyes, because I
Mhm.
think immediately you're drawn to it.
Yeah.
But there's, I guess, with children as well, when you're watching it through their perspective, there's also a more honest truth to what you're watching. And I think it's quite interesting if you actually look at the Iranian program that we're running at Lab. There's quite some films that are based through the perspective of children, like Where is the Friend's House, Children of Heaven. And I think it speaks actually to Iran and censorship. It's probably a lot harder to make films where you tell it, this film is still very political, but yet you perhaps don't notice it's a bit more subtle because it's through a child's eyes. You get a whole story of Iran's history, obviously very condensed, but you try and understand how these kids think and feel about their own country and how it's shaped by their parents. There's this one moment, right, where Marjane is chasing this kid on a bike with nails, and supposedly his father has killed lots of communists, he says, and the other kid is sort of very proud that his father has done that, whereas she recognizes that it's a very bad thing to have done, and how they are shaped by the ideologies that they learn at home.
She gets told the story by a family member. That's her idea of the story. By the way, these flashbacks of the history are beautifully animated. They are insane. But yeah, it's very clear that this is how she feels about it. And then this boy has his dad who's like on the other side of it. And the kids have such a sense of like right and wrong. And there's no nuance. It's like, you're bad and your dad's bad. And they figure it out between the two of them. It's like, who's my dad?
Yeah. Obviously, it's also very sad because you see how a country is trying to liberate itself from its past, but yet it's always pushed back against. So, for instance, in the story of the family member telling Iran's history, they explain how the Shah claimed himself as like elected by God, and how that was actually influenced by the British imperialism, and how that was also their quest for oil. And then eventually they were corrupted by money and power. And then once they were overthrown, the Islamic revolution sort of became a much more fundamentalist thing where all their individuality and rights were stripped back. And you see how tough it is for them to live in that space of Margie trying to be just an everyday girl, trying to enjoy things like punk rock music and all this stuff. And eventually she goes to the West because it's not safe for her anymore, because she is so outspoken, which I really like. How, again, when kids say the truth, you listen to them a bit more because you're like, how do they know this?
Yeah, and I think what it does really well is that putting it in this frame, it's something we can all relate to, because then she gets sent to Vienna and she arrives there and she's a complete alien. Like, she just doesn't understand how these kids act, and she's very much an outsider. She makes friends and da-da-da. But then eventually when she goes back to Iran, she's spent quite a lot of time in Europe. And then she doesn't belong there anymore because there she's now the weird one who spent time in Europe. And it's this very like powerful way to frame a refugee situation. You know, the thing that like pisses me off how people talk about refugees anyway, but the thing that always pisses me off when people talk about refugees is like, well, they came here and they had like iPhones, and then it's like, God, bitch, like, don't you understand that this is people of all walks of life that have to get out of this country for safety reasons? And putting in this character of this teenage girl who listens to punk rock, who dresses cool, who wears eyeliner, it hopefully makes it so much more real to people that like, hey, these are people like me that had to go away and then also weren't really able to return and feel like themselves.
Yeah, I also think like when she goes to the West or Vienna, as a viewer, at least from our perspective, you expect her to be having things to get better for her to have more opportunity, as we're told, and all this stuff. And you see how hard it is for her not only to fit in, but also just to survive. Yeah. And that like her own shock that she's been made homeless and that people don't care if you go hungry on the streets, which she lived through. And I think the fact it's autobiographical, but the fact that it's animation makes it so much stronger for me, because I think it's hard to really capture these memories. And it makes me think of, there's this really great animated documentary called Flee, which is a similar story of someone who flees, I believe, Afghanistan and makes their way to Norway. And it, again, this is something you can't necessarily reconstruct, but it's all told through memory and how they remember it. And yeah, and then when she comes back to Iran, even though she doesn't quite fit in, there's still a sense of home and belonging. And I think I always find it strange that people believe refugees want to leave their homes just because they think somewhere else is better. I think it's quite clear that they feel best where they're surrounded by their own people. And yet, still, even with like the danger and the threat of living under such a strict regime, there is something more comforting in that because she's surrounded by her family. Yeah. But was there anything that surprised you while watching this?
I think the thing that surprised me is also a thing that really hit home for me is, and I think it surprised her as well when she was going through this, is that like when she was in Vienna, she started dating this boy that she fell in love with. And then he cheats on her and they break up. First of all, I do think animation is the best way to do this because like in her flashbacks when she's in love with him, he's like a beautiful, handsome boy. Yeah. And then when they break up, he's really ugly. But what surprised me is that she was like, she cried so much more about that than all the like really big things that happened. Yeah. And it reminds me of on last week's episode, you guys were talking about Hiroshima Mon Amour, and that sometimes focusing on these little stories of like a story of one person going through their emotions can be much more not powerful, but like easier to make your way into than this big event, like this big world-changing, life-changing, horrific event that happened for everyone. It's silly and but also true that the day-to-day can sometimes throw you off more.
Yeah, definitely. I think it also relates to, so on my like social media feed, I also see like kids being interviewed from Palestine, and what they from what I've been watching, what they talk of the most is how they love being able to go to school because it's the one place where they feel like they're a child again. And I think with this moment of where she falls in love for the first time, you feel that she gets to be like a young girl again that gets to worry about all the things that any other young girl who is safe is able to worry about, and perhaps is why she's so there's this outpour of emotion there.
Yeah, also because it gets taken away from her. Yeah, no, I thought this was really, really beautiful. Have you read the graphic novel?
No, I haven't read the graphic novel, but
I hear it's even better. Like I haven't read it either, but I hear that it's even better and it goes into way more detail. Some things in the movie seem like they kind of come out of nowhere, or like bits are just like way more expanded in the graphic novel. So I'm like really interested in reading that.
I think it really captures like this goofy style as well, like with the Eye of the Tiger montage and this kind of stuff. It makes it very fun and like you said, easy to understand. Like it's just someone going through their life, and you get to see all the other things that affect that of her being able to live a normal life.
Yeah, and in animation, you can also make the villain very villainous, you can make small people very small and big people very big. And I also just like love the style of animation. It's the black and white, and the backgrounds are kind of like pencil sketchy.
Yeah, very comic book like.
But it's also a very memorable style because I hadn't seen this movie before, but I had seen the posters and the pictures, and it always really stood out to me as something that I wanted to watch because it's so unique and of itself.
Yeah, I definitely recommend to go watch it.
It's playing right now at Lab 111 and also nationwide. So, Black Bag. We have a new Steven Soderbergh. That's the director that, of course, brought us the Ocean's movies, the Magic Mikes, things like Aaron Brockovich, and a ton more. Black Bag is a kind of spy thriller that seems to kind of take the piss out of James Bond-esque movies. We have Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett as a hot, sexy married couple who just so happen to both be intelligence agents. Fassbender's character faces a huge dilemma when his wife is suspected of betraying the nation. So now we got to figure out, can he trust her, or is she bullshitting him and siding with the enemy? Here's the clip.
I can feel when you're watching me.
Sorry.
I like it.
I understand this is not the casual dinner you prefer.
Yeah, it's an unusual group. Data scraper, 2 agents, and the in-house shrink. What are we hunting this time?
Severus.
And you think one of them took it?
Possibly.
It's been a while since we had a traitor to dinner. At least knowingly.
We shouldn't be discussing this.
No, probably not. I would have thought you'd start with polygraphs.
I wanted to try something more elegant first.
Elliot, we saw this together. I kind of know what you think, but like, tell me about your thoughts.
The opening sequence kind of tells you everything. It first starts out as this like one take. It's building suspense.
He's walking into a club.
Exactly. He's going to speak to the big boss, and he then brings the big boss outside. They're going to get into a discussion. This is all still one shot. And then it's just this random cut to a side shot. It's like a side profile shot. And I think how it plays with that expectation of you're thinking it's going to be very action-packed, suspenseful, this kind of stuff, and then it cuts it there. Sort of tells you how the film is going to be for the rest of the duration. It was 90 minutes long, but it felt way longer than 90 minutes, at least for me.
For me, it was kind of in a good way.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, it didn't feel short, but I was also like, oh, I thought this would be, the action would make it feel shorter.
Mm-hmm.
I think as I was watching it, you start to realize that this isn't the spy thriller you were expecting. As you said, it's kind of like a satire of James Bond. It really takes the action out of it, and
totally
you focus on the people in the film. And I think it was about halfway. What are the two? What, George? No, what's the
character names? Beats me.
But anyway,
generic British name and generic British name.
Exactly. But Michael Fassbender is having a conversation with the young woman who is in what's the TV series?
Is it the Marissa Abela character? I was like, where the fuck do I know this girl from? You know where I know her from? She played Amy Winehouse in that god-awful Sam Taylor Johnson biopic.
I haven't seen that. But she also plays in that film about industry. She plays in industry.
I haven't seen that show.
She plays literally probably the same character in both these films. But they have a conversation about how working in like intelligence, your job is to lie and deceive people. So how can you ever know when each other's being honest? And that felt
in a relationship, because she is also together with someone who's in the same intelligence agency. Yeah. And I feel like the movie focuses way more on those interpersonal relationships than it does on any like James Bondy action. And that worked for me because I couldn't give two shits about a car chase. No. Let's be real. So I do like it exploring all these intricacies of like, it must be kind of tough to be a spy. I don't think this movie's doing anything super groundbreaking, but I did really enjoy it in the sense that it was like a dad movie. It's like one of those like Sunday afternoon dad movies.
It was a bit of a flashback to like his Ocean 11 series of like the puzzle narrative of who did it, how did they do it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what we were saying as well. I said that kind of to your surprise, I said it reminded me quite a lot of Knives Out.
Yeah.
In the sense that
now I see it.
It's not a spy movie. It's more of like a whodunit.
Yeah.
It's like someone betrayed something. And is it the wife, or is it the guy, or is it that guy, or is it that girl, and they're in a relationship, so that makes that dynamic interesting. It's way more of that, which was a pleasant surprise to me, to be honest. The script was written by David Koepp, who's the guy who did like Jurassic Park, Mission Impossible, Death Becomes Her, like a ton of these great
It feels
scripts.
like a very different script to the films he's written then.
He's someone who works constantly.
Okay.
He's a busy boy. But he is a good script writer, I think. And in the end, I feel like this movie just ended up at like, I did give it like 4 stars because I think it does exactly what it wants to do. I love that the 95-minute movie is back.
Yeah.
I think that's a flaw that a lot of these types of movies have, is that they'll just like really overstay their welcome. They're going to be 2.5 hours long. Whatever you want them to be, it's always going to be 2.5 hours long. I think the reason why I knocked a couple of points is because I don't think it's going to be very memorable. And also, one thing that really stood out to me, I just kept thinking about, we're all so surprised that Regé-Jean Page didn't really have a career after Bridgerton. And now I kind of know why. It's because he's not a very strong actor. And the thing that he's doing, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but do you know those videos on TikTok that are like those thirst traps of those guys just kind of like rubbing their hands and biting their lip and just kind of like side smiling to the camera? He was doing that the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time he was just kind of like Zoolandering his way through. Just kind of like frowning and... Oh, yeah. He just knows he's really hot. And I think hot people aren't the most interesting actors. And I think that kind of took me out of it. Other than that, I really liked it.
I would agree with most of that. At the time, I was having fun. I wasn't checking my watch, but I'm not sure if I'll be thinking about this film.
I don't think I'll think about it ever again. But that is kind of fine. Sometimes
you need films like that.
Sometimes you need like a Michelin star dinner, and sometimes you need a Big Mac. That's kind of like, oh, by the way, the boycott. But yeah, that's just what it is. Okay, next up we have Showgirls. So in Paul Verhoeven's Showgirls, we have Elizabeth Berkley as Nomi Malone. She's a young hitchhiker who arrives in Las Vegas with dreams of becoming a dancer at one of those showgirl shows. She unfortunately starts out at a sleazy strip club, but eventually she claws her way into the glitzy, brutal world of professional showgirls at a big casino. Here's the clip.
I didn't like showing him off with the cheetah.
Why not? I liked looking at him there. Everybody liked looking at him there.
Made me feel like a hooker.
You are a whore, darling.
No, I'm not.
We all are. We take the cash, we cash the check, we show them what they want to see.
Maybe you are a whore, Crystal, but I'm not.
Okay, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm kind of obsessed with it. This is camp. I recognize that it's not a great film. Like, you can't compare this to a Citizen Kane, or you can't compare it to like an actually good movie. But to me, this is what I love about movies. It's Showgirls. It's so camp. It's pink. It looks great. I just kept thinking about how a couple of weeks ago on this very podcast, we reviewed The Last Showgirl. And this is everything I would have wanted that to be. It's visually stunning. It's sexy. It's, it doesn't try to be good. Or maybe it is. I don't know. I would need to speak to Paul Verhoeven to know if he wanted this to be good. But I don't know. I love it exactly for what it is. How do you feel?
Yeah, I would preface this by saying we did a whole part of this speaking to Basha Bull about female stereotypes that we love in cinema. And this was a film that we focused on. So I definitely recommend listening to that. I did really like it. I really enjoyed it. But I think there was this one moment I was watching it with my girlfriend. We were watching her dance in the club, Nomi. And we were like, but she's not a good dancer. She's a terrible dancer. And then these two guys who are watching go to her, she's terrible at dancing. We're like, okay, thank you. We're not crazy here. It does feel like a whole kind of satire of the whole place. And I think I will say Elizabeth Berkley, because she was really ridiculed and crucified for this film. I think it really affected her career after this.
Yeah, in a big way.
Whatever Paul Verhoeven's trying, how she's acting is pretty incredible because it's very expressive, over the top, dramatic. Like, you can't dance that badly just because you're a bad dancer.
Yeah.
It has to be very, intentional. And it's very fun, but it's also just a constant of her coming to the realization of everybody trying to exploit her in whatever way possible, and her trying to work out if she's okay with that and where her boundaries lie.
Yeah.
But I was also saying to my girlfriend who's Dutch, this feels like a very Dutch film.
Yeah.
And
there's a ton of tits.
Yeah. But also the humor, and how everything just goes very fast. It's very direct to the point. Oh, we're getting married now. Oh, we're suddenly a thing. Oh, no, we're not. I think the humor really works in this place because it creates this stilted effect of you're living in this very artificial, exuberant world of Las Vegas. And so everything doesn't feel like has any meaning at the same time.
I also had a realization while watching this where I was like, is this just a modern remake of All About Eve?
Yeah, true.
Is, because already this main dancer girl at the casino called Crystal, she's this she's a star. She's clearly on all the billboards. And she meets Nomi, and then she goes, I like your nails. You should do my nails sometime. Then when Nomi ends up dancing there, she asks her to become her understudy. And this is it just kind of reminded me of All About Eve. Is she doesn't realize that her bringing in this girl is going to mean her own downfall.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great little, oh yeah, that thing about how we only have 36 stories in life. This is definitely one of those.
I saw a lot of the substance in this of how Crystal is the older woman, and I think she even says to Nomi at one point, there's always someone younger coming for you from behind, and how cutthroat that industry is.
Mm-hmm.
I was sort of more mesmerized by the dance sequences. You're in this you're just watching a whole performance every time. And I think that's what I was living for every time I was watching this. And it didn't try to be anything else than what it was, which I also really liked.
There's 2 amazing sequences where she dances on Kyle MacLachlan. They're both batshit crazy. Absolutely ridiculous. I was at some point like, they're in the pool and they're going at it in the pool. And she pulls out some moves where I'm like
the wind turbine or something.
Girl, your spine, careful now. But also, I was like, is this how I'm supposed to be having sex? Because that's not how I do that. And I got a little bit insecure. And then I realized, no, this is absolutely ridiculous. I think you're hurting him. Not a very sexy scene, but like it being so over the top and so ridiculous really makes me feel like maybe it was intended as satire. Like it almost has to be.
Yeah, definitely. Because also like, although you see all these beautiful naked bodies, he tries not to make it very sexy because of how overly dramatic they all are.
It's constantly like you see gorgeous, like the body is tea,
but
you're looking at it going like, oh, okay, okay. It makes you a little bit uncomfortable. And I think you see themes of that in all of Verhoeven's work, where it is just like teetering on this border of just over the top cam. Or is it?
Yeah.
You know?
Which I think is what he loves to do.
He's the master of that. And, you know, in hindsight, it's become a cult classic.
Its cult classic status is definitely deserved. I think people, should go and watch this with a very open mind because it's very fun. And I think it touches on quite some interesting topics that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, go see it. Bring a couple friends. You're going to have a great time. And it looks amazing. And I can't say much else than that I love this movie. So we're going to be screening Persepolis and Showgirls here at Lab 111, so make sure you get your tickets for that. And also, if you're not in Amsterdam, Persepolis is going to be showing nationwide, so I hope you go see it. It's a really beautiful film. Stay connected with us at Celebrating Cinema and Lab by following at Lab 111 on Instagram and Letterboxd. Do you love what we do? Support us by leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us climb the ranks of the podcast charts. And don't forget to check the show notes for all the films mentioned, bonus info, and ticket links. This was a Lab 111 production, edited and produced by Elliot Bloom with music from Hugo Emertsal and artwork from Studio FFF.